Secretary of Homeland Security Jeh Johnson delivered his first major policy address recently at the Wilson Center, outlining his agenda for the coming year. Following his remarks, he joined Wilson Center Director, President, and CEO Jane Harman to further discuss cybersecurity, immigration, and ways to increase cooperation between Homeland Security and the private sector.
Today, I'm pleased to welcome Secretary Jeh Johnson for his first major policy address since taking office on December 23rd. As a former assistant U.S. attorney, lawyer in private practice, general counsel of the Air Force, and later DOD, Jeh Johnson has been on the front lines of counterterrorism policy, from desperately needed reforms at Guantanamo Bay to our U.S. drone policy. He is thoughtful and courageous, and he will need these skills as he confronts the threats of today and those of the future.
As many of you have heard me say before, September 11th is my birthday. Like millions of others, I was an eyewitness to the events of that day. I watched in shock as a beautiful, serene, and ordinary workday was transformed in an instant to one of the worst days in American history. It was out of that day that the Department of Homeland Security was born, and it was out of that day my own personal commitment to the mission of Homeland Security was born. This is the terrorist threat to the homeland, illustrated last year by the Boston Marathon bombing, that I worry about the most. It may be the hardest to detect. Involves independent actors living within our midst with easy access to things that, in the wrong hands, become tools of mass violence. Homeland Security is a team effort. Border and port security is indispensable to Homeland Security. Good border security is a barrier to terrorist threats, drug traffickers, transnational criminal organizations, and other threats to national security and public safety.
How can you, as the leader of the Homeland Department, overcome what was one of the huge objections before, which is the private sector didn't have confidence that Homeland had the capacity to handle its responsibilities on cyber?
It is actually not a cybersecurity threat. It is an ongoing series of attacks from various different sources on banks, on substations, on email services that happen on a fairly regular basis of various different degrees of intensity.
The big objection 2 years ago was it's not a well-managed department. I'm not saying this is fair, but this was the objection, and we're wary of cooperating with it.
One of the keys to answer the dilemma, the question you pose, Jane, is visible leadership. Good leadership, but also visible leadership. Good leaders bring in good leaders, but I think that we have to be fairly transparent to become familiar with the private sector, to become familiar with the public, so that we build trust. This is a balance. It's a delicate balance. Do we have it right now? Are we perfect right now? Probably not, but I think that a basic responsibility for those of us charged with Homeland Security and law enforcement and national security is to find that right balance and to be sensitive to it.
For more information on the Directors Forums and other programs and initiatives, visit wilsoncenter.org.